Good afternoon. This is The Social on Talk Sport 2. I'm Harry Symeon. I've got the former Crystal Palace, Newcastle and Ipswich Town midfielder Darren Ambrose alongside me between now and 5 p.m. We'll be looking ahead to the return of the Premier League. It's finally back after the international break. We've got our three to watch from the weekend's action, and we're going to discuss Manchester United versus Brentford, as if it could be an audition maybe for the Bees boss Thomas Frank, who told us earlier this week that he is flattered by links to some of the top jobs. We'll also discuss the struggling teams at the bottom. Two of the four that haven't won yet are former clubs of Darren's. Which one is most likely to pick up a much-needed 3 points this weekend? And we're going to discuss the standout fixture of the round, Liverpool versus Chelsea. And it's the beginning of a difficult run for Arne Slot's Liverpool side. Plus, we'll discuss a big game at the top of the Championship. The mighty Leeds United take on their Yorkshire rivals, Sheffield United, live here later on TalkSport 2. This is The Social on TalkSport 2.
The TalkSport 2 Social.
And now Son Heung-min is released through the inside right channel. Squares it across for Maddison for 3-1. James Maddison.
There's nothing like when your fans come to the stadium and see you win and have that feeling after the game.
Bowen's left-footed curler. It's an absolutely brilliant goal for West Ham.
Oh, the Premier League, we've missed you. The best Liverpool manager in terms of a start to the season, not Jurgen, Arne Slot.
Corner's taken short. It's Cole Palmer. He's done it. A hat-trick. Chelsea win. And it's been turned in on the rebound. And Manchester City have snatched a point right at the end of the game.
Another stay of execution for Erik ten Hag.
In the club, we are together. We are convinced we will be successful in the end of this.
And Mbeumo scores, they've done it again. Brentford score inside the first minute.
The Premier League, absolutely magnificent.
Oh yes, the Premier League is back this weekend, and we're going to focus on that clash between Manchester United and Thomas Frank's Brentford. United boss Erik ten Hag insists he's not spoken to the club's hierarchy about his position. They've had their worst ever start to a Premier League season, having won just 2 of their 7 games. There were reports that ten Hag could have lost his job during the international break, but he says the media have got that wrong.
No, the noise is only coming from the media, from you guys, for some of you, let's say this, not all of you, but some of you who bringing up stories, creating fairy tales, making the noise, bringing lies, because I know we are on one page in this club. I told this before the break. I told several journalists, probably they didn't believe me, because I see the reports, but internal in the club, it's quiet. Of course, we are discussing in the position where we are, and that we are unhappy with the position where we are, and how we have to turn the corner, and what has to happen, and so what should be the strategy to turn this corner. But ultimately, we are quiet, we are composed, we stay where we are, we stick to the plan, and we are very convinced we will make it a success.
We're on the same page internally, is what Erik ten Hag's message is there. It seems to me, Darren, looking from the outside, in that they're looking at the wrong page because it isn't working.
Honestly, I don't know what to say listening to that. I mean, he said it's the media creating fairy tales. I mean, I think a lot of the United supporters' fairy tale would be he wouldn't be here now, to be honest. I just don't understand where his confidence comes from. I think in the top 5 European leagues, Southampton, St. Pauli and Lecce are the only 3 sides that scored less than Manchester United.
Wow.
So far. They've scored 5 goals. So I think we got the odds from William Hill earlier that said Man U to win, both teams to score. I don't know where that's coming from. I honestly think Brentford are favourites for this game. I really do. I think every team now, I know it's at Old Trafford, but every team will go to Old Trafford thinking they've got a soft underbelly, and I think we can come away with something. And you'd have to say, given that it's Brentford that they're playing, if after an international break, after 2 weeks of working on the training field, if they concede in the first 2 minutes, I think the third minute they should get rid of Erik ten Hag, because what's it been, 4 games now that they've scored in the first minute, then second minute. You cannot allow this to happen again. I said the same thing with Gary O'Neill, that you weren't looking at your coaching staff yourself if you concede early. They did after 2 minutes. Brentford have scored really early and only won one of those games. You cannot allow them to start. But I don't know what you think. I think Brentford are favourites for this game, even though it's at Old Trafford.
I don't know that I would put Brentford as favourites, but I understand where you're coming from. Because I look at this Manchester United side and I see exactly what you just described. Soft underbelly, a lack of potency in attack. And I go back to where this all comes from. And I always end up back at Erik ten Hag. And this is the problem I have with this, right? So there are players that Manchester United have signed in recent years that nobody is going to convince me were not signings led by Erik ten Hag. They're players that have played for him, that he has a relationship with. He's brought in 2 strikers, okay? In Rasmus Højlund, who's a young man who started to show signs of promise in Serie A and was picked up by Manchester United for a lot of money, in my opinion, before he was ready. Comes over, scores a few goals in Europe. Everybody thinks happy days. Has had some injury problems along the way, but the goals have dried up. Yeah. And then you see that they've got a problem converting. You see that they were in a position last season where Marcus Rashford actually done quite well, but then you know that if that drops off, and Rashford is one of those players, he blows hot and cold, you've got a problem with goals. So what do? They go out in the summer and they bring in Joshua Zirkzee, another Serie A-based striker who, for anybody that watched him, would have told you clearly goal scoring is not really his thing. And I know that sounds mad because he's a centre-forward, but he is very much as false a 9 as false 9s go. He is that guy that drops deep, that brings others into play, and he tries to bring the best out of the wingers. You've got a goal-scoring problem, and you haven't addressed it. Now, I wonder if there is someone at Manchester United that's saying, we're only going to sign players of a certain age profile. In Højlund and Zirkzee, you've got players that can develop in the future. Maybe there's some of that there as well. But I just look at all the problems that United have, and they all stem back to Erik ten Hag. How many more times can people sort of look upstairs? Ineos are in now. They're supposed to fix everything. They were supposed to change the world. They haven't even got the ruthlessness to get rid of Erik ten Hag. They've got rid of Sir Alex Ferguson, though, from his ambassadorial role. What do you make of that? Because that's been a big story this week.
I mean, the ambassadorial role, I've got no... I don't know what to say about it. I've got no preference whether he should stay or go. I think just over 2 million they were paying him as well. So I think it's right to a certain degree, and I think he'll still do club appearances in the name of Manchester United, of course, and I think they'll pay him whatever it will be, 40, 50 grand a time, maybe, if that's what it will be. So I think in terms of that, I have no care, really, that they're doing that. However, in terms of him not being allowed into the dressing room and around the training ground, which is we're led to believe, I think that's outrageous. I think the man should be able to do whatever he wants around the football club to a certain degree, in terms of not getting a couple of million for sitting and watching the football. But yeah, he should be allowed to go wherever he wants. And I think that gives a real element of, confidence to the team as well, and pressure to a certain degree. You see Sir Alex Ferguson come down, an absolute legend, 13 Premier League titles at the club, and he comes into the dressing room before or after the game. You think, we've got to do well today. We've got to impress this man that's here today, this legend. So to not allow that, is that fronted by Erik ten Hag? I don't know. So you are right. So Jim Ratcliffe, Ineos Group, they can make ruthless decisions, but they've not made the one that wouldn't seem that ruthless, to be honest, by getting rid of Erik ten Hag. And look, I'm never an advocate for sacking managers. I'm not. I feel harsh saying it, but I think the job's too big for him. I really do. And like I said, when I'm looking at it from the outside, look, I could be eating my words after the weekend, but when I'm looking at it thinking Brentford at Old Trafford are favourites in my eyes, something's wrong, seriously.
Yeah, just on the Fergie point as well, very, very quickly, like, I don't think it's a bad decision. Like, I think if you're a football club and you're trying to generate or maximise as much money as you can to be able to spend and improve your squad, something like that is an unnecessary cost, right? I don't dispute that for a second, but it's about timing. when the team is doing well,
Yeah.
if the team is moving in the right direction and you make a decision like that, people take it so much better than when the team is struggling and the one semblance of what Manchester United used to be that remains at that football club, you've taken it away.
Yeah.
You're sending a bad message.
Yeah.
One man who's been linked with the job is Erik ten Hag's opponent this weekend, Thomas Frank. He'll be in the opposing dugout, of course. But he's admitted that it's flattering to be linked with this type of job.
I've said many times I'm very happy at Brentford. Who knows what will happen in the future? Maybe I'll stay here for many years. I'm open. Maybe something happen. But first and foremost, very happy. Just working very hard every day to try to make the club better.
You're very happy here, but open to something else happening further down the line.
That's because it's very difficult to predict the future. So who knows what will happen? And how many coaches have been in the same club more than 6 years? Very few. So just the nature of the game, let's put it that way.
Jim White doing his utmost there to try and lure him into saying something that he might regret, but Thomas Frank was never falling for that. How good is Thomas Frank, Darren? Because he's taken on a football club that are, in my opinion, and have been for a long time now, punching well above their weight. And he's been at the epicenter of all of that success.
Well, in terms of that, you can say he's a tremendous manager. If you look at his honours, his trophies, he hasn't won much, but that's really harsh to say because, as you said, he's at a club like Brentford that is not going to be competing for all these trophies. So how good is he at a top club? We don't know yet, but I just feel he deserves an opportunity now to show it. I think he's been there, as you said, over 6 years now at Brentford, and that's some going for a Premier League side. And he's got a real feel-good factor to him. I think the supporters love him. The players seem to love playing for him. And that, again, Brentford supporters will probably be saying, screaming at their radios, don't get rid of our manager. But that is a manager and that is a person that Manchester United need. They need a feel-good factor. They need someone to come in to change the aspect of the club, to change the dynamics of this down in the doldrums, and losing week in, week out, and then being deluded in your interview saying you're tremendous and you're not under pressure. Thomas Frank's an honest manager, and that's what they need. They need a feel-good factor to come in and change the whole dynamics of that football club and just have a fresh start. And I just feel he is ready. He's ready for that opportunity.
The first game I ever covered as press was a Brentford game at Griffin Park, and Thomas Frank was the manager. And I went in there and I was nervous, and I didn't know whether I could ask a question in the press conference. And he went around every single person in there, shook their hand, and said, "Is there anything that you want to ask?" I thought it was brilliant. Yeah. And one of the things I've always loved about Thomas Frank, and as I've watched his journey, is how personable he is. My only worry is that when you go to a club like Manchester United, where the scrutiny level is 100 times more than it is at Brentford, can you still be that guy? And so would Thomas Frank lose or have to lose what makes him so great, or at least park it in order to handle what would come his way in that job? That's my concern. Yeah,
of course. That would be everyone's concern. I think I'd have that concern. Maybe Thomas Frank will have that, but you don't know. That's the thing. That's the debate we're having. We don't know how he will react to that pressure, to that size of Manchester United until he's given that opportunity. And I think he's done well enough in the Premier League since Brentford become in the Premier League, and he's taken that club as a real one of everyone's second, third favourite clubs in the Premier League. And I think it's down to him and the atmosphere that he creates. And if he can handle that side of it and he goes to a club like Manchester United and he signs the right players, because that is huge for them, their transfers, he could be really successful there.
He could be, no doubt about it. He's a top manager, and I hope one day he gets the opportunity to show what he can do at a club of that size.
On AM, on DAB, via the TalkSport app and on your smart speaker. TalkSport.